Welcome, I'm David, and this is Crime Line. Tonight, we delve into a case that illustrates how a bright future, filled with artistic promise and youthful ambition, can be extinguished by the insidious encroachment of obsessive jealousy. In 2009, in the sprawling city of Dallas, Texas, a talented art student named Shelly Nance was found brutally murdered in her own apartment. The investigation that followed would unravel a disturbing narrative of unrequited affection, simmering resentment, and a meticulously planned act of violence, ultimately pointing to someone within her close circle, someone whose quiet demeanor concealed a deadly fixation. This is the heartbreaking story of Shelly Nance and the obsessive roommate whose deadly jealousy shocked a community. Samantha Shelly Nance was born and raised in the small, close-knit Texas town of Italy, located in Ellis County, south of the bustling Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. From a young age, Shelly quickly became known for her remarkable artistic skills and her genuinely friendly and engaging attitude. She showed an early and profound interest in art and creativity, often lost in her sketchbooks, which were filled with drawings that showcased a strong, vivid imagination and a keen eye for detail. Growing up in a supportive community, her family actively nurtured her artistic goals. Shelly, in turn, worked diligently at her craft, frequently entering school art contests and participating in neighborhood art shows, often to great acclaim. Her parents, filled with pride at her many successes and her burgeoning talent, encouraged her aspirations of becoming a recognized figure in the art world. Shelly's artistic talent continued to blossom and mature throughout high school, a fact readily noticed and praised by her teachers and peers alike. Her friends described her as not just friendly, but also driven and ambitious, possessing an infectious energy that seemed to uplift everyone around her. Beyond her passion for art, Shelly enjoyed music, had a taste for travel, and cherished spending quality time with her family and friends. She was a keen observer, always looking for inspiration in the world around her, constantly seeking new ideas and perspectives to fuel her creativity. Determined to pursue her artistic dreams at a higher level, Shelly applied to college after graduating high school. She was accepted into the prestigious Art Institute of Dallas, a significant step towards achieving her ambitious goals. The transition from the quiet, familiar life of a small town like Italy, Texas, to the fast-paced, sprawling urban environment of Dallas was both exhilarating and challenging for Shelly. However, she embraced the change with her characteristic positivity and determination. Shelly quickly adapted to her new surroundings in the vibrant city. She immersed herself in her studies, focusing intently on her coursework, and soon formed close bonds with classmates who shared her fervent passion for art. At the Art Institute, Shelly worked tirelessly to hone her skills, particularly in computer design and fine art. Her professors took note of her unwavering dedication and her innate talent, often praising her for her unique creativity and strong work ethic. She began to gain recognition for her distinctive artistic style, which artfully blended traditional methods with contemporary digital techniques. When she wasn't absorbed in her schoolwork, Shelly eagerly explored Dallas's lively art scene, frequenting galleries, attending exhibitions, and drawing inspiration from the city's rich and diverse culture. During her time at the Art Institute, Shelly shared an apartment in the Lake Highlands neighborhood of Dallas with Ash Olvera, a fellow student who became one of her best friends. As they navigated the challenges and triumphs of college life together, their bond of friendship grew even stronger. Ashley often reflected on Shelly's innate kindness, her unwavering support, and how she always managed to cheer on and help her friends, no matter how demanding their academic work became. Despite the rigors of her studies, Shelly was determined to maintain a balanced life, actively participating in social events and diligently staying in touch with her beloved family back in her hometown of Italy. Alongside her academic pursuits, Shelly was also in a happy and supportive relationship with Nathan Shuck, who was also a student at the Art Institute. They shared a deep love of art, and their connection was further strengthened by their mutual passions. They would spend countless hours discussing their artistic aspirations, critiquing each other's work, and offering encouragement. Friends and classmates often saw them together at college events, collaborating on projects, and dreaming of the day when they could transform their shared hobby into a fulfilling professional career. However, amidst this picture of youthful ambition and happiness, subtle undercurrents of trouble began to emerge in Shelly's life. As she diligently worked towards her goals, small problems started to surface within her social group, primarily connected to her relationship with Nathan. Some of their peers began to notice that Nathan's roommate, a young man named Daniel William, was exhibiting behavior towards Shelly that was unexpectedly possessive and tinged with jealousy. At first glance, Daniel seemed like a quiet, perhaps even shy, individual. But as time went on, the way he interacted with and observed Shelly became increasingly unsettling to those around them. Although these were initially perceived as minor worries, Shelly, ever focused on her future, tried to keep her mind on her studies and her aspirations. She was determined to complete her degree and make a distinguished name for herself in the competitive art world. With a bright future seemingly stretching out before her, Shelly believed she was firmly on the path to success. But tragically, an act of unimaginable violence would soon shatter that promise of tomorrow, irrevocably changing the lives of everyone who knew and loved her. On the morning of September 11th, 2009, Ashley Olvera, Shelly's roommate, returned to their Dallas apartment in the Lake Highlands area after attending her classes at the Art Institute. A sense of unease had been growing within her. She hadn't seen Shelly for a few days and was becoming increasingly worried, especially since Shelly's parents had also contacted her, concerned that they hadn't heard from their daughter either. As Ashley walked into their usually vibrant apartment, she was struck by an unnerving, heavy quietness that hung in the air. "When I called out for Shelly," Ashley would later recount, "she didn't answer." Her heart pounding with a growing dread, she cautiously walked up to Shelly's bedroom door, which was found to be slightly ajar. Ashley pushed the door open further and was confronted with a scene of absolute horror. Shelly was lying face down on her bed, the covers stained with what was unmistakably blood. "It was horrifying," Ashley recalled, the shock of the moment forever seared into her memory, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Ashley immediately called 911, her voice trembling as she relayed the horrific discovery to the emergency dispatcher. She was overwhelmed by shock and terror. As soon as the first emergency responders arrived at the apartment, they quickly secured the scene and confirmed the worst. Samantha Shelly Nance, just 20 years old, a young woman brimming with talent and life, was deceased. Detectives from the Dallas Police Department were immediately summoned to investigate what was clearly a violent death. The initial examination of Shelly's body at the scene revealed that she had been subjected to a savage and brutal assault. She had sustained an astonishing 42 stab wounds, concentrated primarily in her neck and back, injuries that pointed unequivocally to a violent, frenzied, and deeply personal attack. The sheer number of wounds often suggests intense rage or a highly agitated state in the perpetrator. Since there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, no broken locks, no shattered windows, investigators immediately theorized that Shelly had either known her attacker personally or had, for some reason, willingly let them into the perceived safety of her home. Furthermore, there was no evidence of sexual assault or theft. Shelly's valuable belongings, including her laptop, wallet, and jewelry, were found undisturbed in the apartment, which led investigators to believe that the motive for this horrific crime was not robbery, but something far more personal and sinister. News of Shelly's terrible death quickly spread, sending shockwaves of grief and disbelief through the tight-knit community of Italy, Texas, where she grew up. as well as among her friends and colleagues at the Art Institute of Dallas. The senseless killing of a young woman who had shown so much promise, talent, and kindness was a devastating blow to her friends, family, and classmates. Vigils were held in her honor, where scores of people gathered to share their profound sadness and their cherished, happy memories of Shelly. The brutal and seemingly senseless nature of the crime left everyone wanting answers, desperate to understand what could have led to such a tragedy. As the Dallas police worked diligently to piece together the events of that terrible day, investigators began by interviewing Shelly's closest friends and family members, hoping to uncover any clues or insights that might lead them to her killer. When they spoke with Ashley Olvera, Shelly's devastated roommate, she provided them with a timeline of her last contacts with Shelly and gave them detailed information about their living situation and Shelly's recent activities. Nathan Shuck, Shelly's boyfriend, was also extensively questioned as the investigation progressed. Detectives would soon uncover a complex and disturbing web of simmering passion, jealousy, and obsession that would ultimately lead them directly to Shelly's killer. At Shelly's apartment, the crime scene itself told a chilling story of the attack's brutality. Shelly's bedroom, once a sanctuary for her creativity and self-expression, had been transformed into a place of unimaginable horror. She was found lying face down on her bed, having been stabbed multiple times in her back and neck. The sheer viciousness and number of the injuries strongly indicated a deeply personal and frenzied attack, reinforcing the police theory that the perpetrator likely knew Shelly well. The fact that there were 42 separate stab wounds was one of the most terrifying aspects of the case. Later, the medical examiner confirmed that the injuries were caused by a knife, with the majority of the wounds concentrated on her upper body. The lack of any signs of a struggle or defensive wounds elsewhere in the apartment suggested that Shelly might have been taken completely by surprise or very quickly incapacitated by her attacker. Despite the extreme violence of the attack itself, the crime scene, paradoxically, was described as strangely well organized in other respects. There were no broken locks or windows, nor any other overt signs of forced entry. There was also no clear indication of a prolonged struggle having taken place throughout the apartment. After carefully processing Shelly's bedroom, investigators meticulously went through the rest of the apartment, searching for any trace evidence, hairs, fibers, fingerprints, that could help them identify the killer. As noted, they found no signs of theft. Shelly's valuable possessions remained untouched, making robbery an unlikely motive. Police carefully swabbed various surfaces where they believed the attacker might have left DNA traces. One crucial piece of evidence discovered was a small, bloody footprint found near Shelly's bedroom door. Investigators quickly determined that the footprint did not match Shelly's shoe size, leading them to believe it belonged to her killer. Also deeply upsetting was the discovery of a torn plastic Ziploc bag in a nearby trash can. It appeared to have traces of Shelly's blood and some of her hair on it. This shocking find raised disturbing questions. Had the killer taken something from the scene of the crime? Perhaps a gruesome trophy or an item of personal significance? And if so, why? Given the absence of forced entry, police strongly suspected that Shelly had willingly let her attacker into her apartment, likely someone she knew and trusted, or at least did not perceive as a threat. Their investigative attention naturally focused on her circle of close friends, acquaintances, and any romantic relationships she might have had as they began to delve deeper into her personal life. Nathan Shuck, Shelly's boyfriend, immediately became a person of interest, as is common in such cases. Nathan had spent a considerable amount of time at the apartment Shelly shared with Ashley, and police needed to explore the possibility that their relationship might have soured or encountered serious problems. While the forensic experts continued their meticulous examination of the crime scene and the collected evidence, detectives spoke with Shelly's friends and neighbors, It quickly emerged that Shelly had been seen alive and seemingly well the night before her body was discovered, and no one they spoke to initially had heard of any recent arguments or problems she might have been experiencing. One neighbor, however, did report seeing a strange individual personage hanging out near the apartment complex on the night of the murder. The description was vague, a male of average build, wearing dark clothing, but it provided police with their first potential, albeit tenuous, lead outside of Shelly's immediate circle. Back at the police station, Ashley Olvera, Shelly's roommate, provided investigators with a more detailed timeline of the events leading up to her horrific discovery. Ashley had been out of town for a few days and explained that she knew immediately that something wasn't right when she returned to their apartment. The dwelling was eerily quiet, and Shelly, who was usually responsive, hadn't answered any of her calls or texts for an unusual length of time, which had deeply scared her. Ashley described Shelly's relationship with Nathan as mostly good and loving, but she did reveal a disturbing tension that existed concerning Nathan's roommate, Daniel William. Daniel, who was generally perceived as quiet and shy, had been living with Nathan and, according to Ashley and other friends, had shown Shelly a strange, almost unsettling amount of interest. Friends recounted that Daniel often seemed to be observing Shelly from afar and appeared to be jealous of Nathan's close relationship with her. Ashley recalled that Shelly herself had mentioned on more than one occasion that she felt awkward and uncomfortable around Daniel, but she had largely ignored these feelings, not wanting to cause any friction or conflict between Nathan and his roommate. As these new facts about Daniel Williams' behavior came to light, the focus of the police investigation began to subtly shift. Daniel, the quiet roommate, was always there, a seemingly innocuous presence in the background. But investigators now wondered if his silence, his apparent shyness, might have been masking a darker, more dangerous passion. Had his unrequited infatuation with Shelly, or perhaps his possessive attachment to Nathan, twisted into something lethal? As the lab results from the collected forensic evidence began to come in, the police quickly found answers that would shock even the most seasoned and experienced homicide detectives among them. When investigators delved deeper into Daniel Williams' background and his relationship with Nathan and Shelly, a disturbing pattern of obsession and jealousy began to emerge. People who knew Daniel described him as painfully shy and socially awkward, someone who had always struggled to make friends. Former peers from the Art Institute characterized him as a loner who seemed to have an unusually intense admiration for Nathan Schuck. Some even suggested that Daniel's feelings for Nathan bordered on obsessional, leading to a strong undercurrent of resentment towards Shelly, whom Daniel apparently viewed as an unwelcome intrusion into Nathan's life and perhaps into their friendship. Witnesses reported that Daniel often made passive-aggressive comments when Shelly was around, his jealousy over her relationship with Nathan palpable to those who observed their interactions. One of Nathan's friends chillingly recalled Daniel once remarking, "She doesn't deserve him. She's ruining everything." Daniel's strange behavior, his proximity to the crime through Nathan, and these unsettling statements now placed him squarely in the detective's sights. Security footage from the apartment building provided further crucial pieces to the puzzle. While cameras did not directly capture Shelly's apartment door, some footage caught Daniel William entering the apartment complex by himself late on the evening of September 10th, the night before Shelly's body was found. He had a stressed look on his face and was seen carrying a small bag. He was later seen leaving the complex again in the early hours of the morning, but this time, significantly, he did not have the bag with him. This timeline seemed to align ominously with the estimated time frame during which Shelly was believed to have been murdered. Armed with this growing body of suspicious information, police obtained a warrant to search Daniel Williams' room and his personal belongings. What they found was deeply troubling. They discovered a collection of printed pictures of Shelly, some of which appeared to have been taken without her knowledge, suggesting a disturbing pattern of stalking. They also found a journal filled with scary, obsessive writings about her. Phrases like, "She's always in the way," and "Nathan will see the truth soon" littered the pages, painting a portrait of a man consumed by jealousy and resentment. When confronted with this evidence, Daniel initially denied having anything to do with Shelly's death. He claimed the pictures were innocent and that he had been at home all night, but his alibi quickly fell apart when investigators found receipts from a nearby Walmart, time-stamped from the night of the crime. Security footage from the Walmart showed Daniel purchasing cleaning supplies, gloves, and a box of large Ziploc bags, the same type of bag that had been found in a trash can near the crime scene containing Shelly's blood and hair. It appeared he was trying to procure items to commit a violent act and then conceal it. Investigators now felt they were closing in on Shelly's killer. The once shy and quiet roommate seemed to be hiding some very dark secrets, and the investigation was about to take an even more definitive turn. Daniel's infatuation with Nathan had apparently warped into a dangerous obsession. Friends and co-workers of Nathan recalled Daniel frequently making passive-aggressive remarks about Shelly, calling her a distraction and claiming she was preventing Nathan from reaching his full potential. Investigators began to strongly suspect that this simmering anger and jealousy had finally boiled over into lethal violence. One acquaintance of Daniel's even recalled him saying, "If she weren't around, things would be so much better." A seemingly off-the-cuff statement at the time, it now carried a chilling, ominous weight in the aftermath of Shelly's murder. The search of Daniel's personal items yielded more damning proof. The unsettling collection of Shelly's photos, many taken surreptitiously from a distance, strongly suggested he had been stalking her. The handwritten diary found under his bed was even more terrifying, its pages filled with disturbing entries that clearly showed Daniel's escalating anger and fixation on Shelly. The writings revealed a man consumed by jealousy of Nathan and a desperate, twisted desire to remove Shelly from Nathan's life at any cost. The Walmart receipt placed his purchase of cleaning supplies, gloves, and Ziploc bags at around 9:45 p.m. on September 10, 2009. Police theorized that Daniel, after buying these materials, waited for an opportunity to strike. Knowing Ashley was out of town and Nathan was unaware of his sinister intentions, Daniel likely gained entry to Shelly's apartment, either by being let in by an unsuspecting Shelly who didn't perceive him as a threat, or possibly by using a spare key he might have had access to through Nathan. Then, a crucial piece of direct physical evidence came to light. Forensic analysis revealed traces of Shelly's blood on the bottom of a pair of sneakers that were seized from Daniel's closet. Even though he had clearly attempted to clean them, sensitive luminol tests, which can detect minute, invisible traces of blood by causing it to luminesce with an eerie blue glow, showed that blood had indeed been present, directly connecting him to the violent crime scene even more conclusively. When confronted with this overwhelming physical evidence, Daniel William continued to insist he wasn't guilty, claiming he had nothing to do with Shelly's death and that the forensic traces on his shoes must have come from something else. Despite Daniel's persistent denials, police and prosecutors believed they had more than enough evidence to charge him with Shelly Nance's murder. The case against him, built on circumstantial, behavioral, and now strong physical evidence, was rapidly solidifying. It was becoming increasingly clear that he had acted out of a deep-seated, obsessive passion and jealousy. What had initially seemed like a tragic and pointless killing was now revealing itself to have been a premeditated act, planned and executed by Daniel William out of his twisted anger and unfulfilled desires concerning Nathan Shuck. Even as police were preparing to arrest Daniel, they knew the eventual trial would likely be challenging, given his continued protestations of innocence. But the weight of the physical and circumstantial evidence painted a damning and undeniable picture. Shelly's grieving family and friends now clung to the hope that this growing mountain of evidence would finally bring justice for the talented young artist whose vibrant life had been so cruelly and senselessly cut short by a dark, all-consuming obsession. As detectives meticulously put together their final case against Daniel William, the combination of physical evidence and witness statements painted an increasingly scary and cohesive picture of his guilt. DNA tests confirmed Shelly's blood on Daniel's shoes and also, significantly, inside his car. Surveillance footage from Walmart definitively showed that on the night before the murder, he had purchased gloves and cleaning materials, items consistent with a planned assault and subsequent cleanup. His disturbing journal entries, filled with expressions of his obsessive anger toward Shelly and his unhealthy fixation on Nathan, further solidified the prosecution's theory of motive. Daniel's own phone records contradicted his alibi, placing him in close proximity to Shelly's apartment complex around the estimated time of her death. The consistent testimony from fellow students about his growing jealousy and possessive behavior toward Shelly, with one friend even recalling him explicitly saying, "She's ruining everything," added powerful corroboration. Daniel William was formally arrested on November 15, 2009, and charged with first-degree murder after this additional compelling proof came to light. His trial began in late 2010 and garnered significant media attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and the obsessive jealousy at its core. Prosecutors methodically presented their strong case, arguing that Daniel had killed Shelly because of his pathological obsession with Nathan Schuck and his deep-seated hatred for Shelly, whom he viewed as an obstacle. They highlighted his disturbing journal, his suspicious purchases on the night of the murder, and the crucial forensic evidence that directly connected him to the crime scene. Nathan Schuck himself testified that Daniel's behavior toward Shelly had indeed become increasingly possessive and hostile in the time leading up to her death. The defense, however, argued that the evidence presented was largely circumstantial and that Daniel's admittedly strange and awkward behavior did not automatically equate to guilt for murder. Shelly's mother delivered an emotional victim impact statement, describing the profound and devastating impact Shelly's loss had inflicted upon their family. After weeks of testimony and the presentation of all evidence, it took the jury a considerable amount of time to deliberate before they ultimately decided that Daniel William was guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, citing the brutal and premeditated nature of the crime, sentenced Daniel to a term of life in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence consistent with Texas law for such a capital felony. Shelly's family, while relieved that justice had been served, remained understandably and profoundly heartbroken by their devastating loss. Her classmates and friends chose to remember her vibrant spirit and artistic talent through art shows and various tributes, ensuring that her positive influence and her passion for art lived on even after such a senseless tragedy. The Art Institute of Dallas, in a fitting tribute, created the Shelly Nance Memorial Scholarship to honor Shelly's love of art and to help other aspiring young artists follow their dreams. In her hometown of Italy, Texas, yearly art shows were held in her honor, and her grieving parents became strong, vocal advocates for ending violence, channeling their pain into positive action. Through these heartfelt actions and enduring tributes, Shelly Nance's bright spirit was kept alive, continuing to inspire many others long after her physical life was so cruelly taken. The tragic story of Shelly Nance serves as a haunting and deeply disturbing reminder of how quickly and dangerously an unrequited obsession, fueled by jealousy and resentment, can escalate into deadly violence, shattering innocent lives and leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and loss. Thank you for joining me on Crime Line. This case underscores the importance of recognizing and addressing warning signs of obsessive behavior and the devastating impact such unaddressed issues can have. We'll see you for our next story.